Well, thanks for joining us today for Studying with Technology. My name is Laura Parks, and I'm an assistive technology specialist here with TASK, which is Technology Assistance for Special Consumers, and I'll be teaching the class today. And really what this session today this webinar is focusing on is how to use technology to study smarter. What I'm seeing a lot of times with students that are transitioning from high school to college is that they received a lot of quality accommodations that helped them learn in high school, but they weren't aware of the tools that they were using that were making them be successful. So I really try to advocate that students that are in high school and transitioning to college learn about technology that can help them be more independent and become successful as a learner in college. So today's presentation is sponsored and collaborated with STAR, which is the statewide assistive technology resource for Alabama, and TASK worked closely with STAR to provide online resources and trainings at startraining.org, and you can find the handouts posted below this recorded webinar. Also at startraining.org, you can find an apps glossary. So many of the apps that we'll talk about today are posted there, as well as you can find additional ones that would provide similar features. There are also free tools that can be downloaded, and there's various modules from note-taking to AT for all learners to AT in college, which is where this webinar has been posted, and also resources to assist with transition, because college is more than just learning how to learn. So when I think about my time at college, I really think there are 4 key things that will help with studying and being an effective learner in college. The 4 things are taking notes, repeating lectures, reading text, and creating flashcards to help you study. So let's talk a little bit about taking notes. What are some of the challenges that students with learning disabilities or with unique learning styles face when they're trying to take notes during college? Well, the first thing may be speed. The professor may just talk way too fast for the student in order to keep up. The student may also be a slow note taker. It may take them a little bit longer to write or type the notes, and the professor just goes too fast. Another challenge is legibility. Maybe the student writes really fast, but when they go back to read their notes, they can't read their writing. I know I've had this problem before too when I'm in a hurry. Some students have visual tracking concerns. For them to look up at a PowerPoint or a presentation, a whiteboard, a chalkboard, and then back down to their paper takes them a few minutes to visually readjust their vision. And it can become very labor intensive for them to look up, look back down, look back up. And this can challenge and slow them down with note taking. Another concern with note-taking is organization. The student may be able to take their notes, and they may do a great job in class, but then they lose them. They misplace them. They stick them in the wrong folder. They forget to put the date on the notes. This is a serious problem because they've made the effort to take the notes, and then now they can't find them. And finally, another challenge that comes with taking notes is you can't listen if you're writing. For some students, they really learn better if they can just listen. Well, if they just listen but they miss something, there's no way to go back and review the lecture or their notes. So it can become difficult for them if they need to listen and yet they're trying to take notes at the same time. So let's take a look now at some technology that may be able to help with note-taking. The first assistive technology we're seeing a lot of students wanting to use is the camera on their phone. If you have a smartphone, you could just take a picture of the PowerPoint or the board in the lecture hall. Well, this is a great option because, yes, you would get all that content right there on your phone. Well, there's a concern with that. First, you would make sure it's important to make sure you have permission from the professor to do this. Just because it's a public class does not mean that you can take pictures. It's important to talk to the professor ahead of time and provide them a copy of your accommodations if you've registered with the Office of Disabilities. Another problem with using your camera to take notes is you can quickly become a passive learner. Passive learner just sitting there, not participating and just occasionally snapping a picture, you may find yourself daydreaming and not paying attention and missing important information. A good professor will often not put every single thing that's important on the board or on the PowerPoint. For this reason, they're saying important information. So taking the pictures is not sufficient to get all the information and the content necessary. Audio recording has been an accommodation available for students with learning disabilities for many years. Students have the opportunity to record a class, and then when they go home to review the class, they can listen to it again. I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I've been in some boring lectures. If I audio recorded a boring lecture, I'm pretty sure it's going to be boring the second time when I have to re-listen to it. What research shows is that not many students will actually re-listen to the lecture. They may have it available for them, but they're not going to re-listen because it's so labor-intensive to have to re-listen to an entire hour of lecture. Again, just like using the camera, it is not acceptable just to audio record the class without the professor being aware of this. In some universities and colleges, this can be a violation of academic policy and can be similar to cheating in a class. So it's important to get permission if you are using this accommodation. Well, what about those students, though, that really do well with audio learning, and they need to be able to hear the content, and they need to be able to audio review the content? Well, technology has changed a lot, and there are some great solutions to help with this. The first is Sonosent Audio Note Taker. This software runs on PC Windows computers as well as Mac computers. And if you'll notice with this screenshot, you can see there's images. So I can quickly import a PowerPoint if the professor has shared it ahead of time. It also lets me type text. And then if you'll notice to the right-hand side, there's a column called Audio. Well, when you're using Sonosent Audio Note Taker, you record the audio. And the audio can then be cut and paste just like a Word file. So let's say I was listening to a lecture and the teacher made 4 very important points in this lecture that I want to be able to re-listen to. Well, I can copy and paste just that audio into a separate new file and then use that audio file to study from. So instead of having to listen to the entire hour lecture, maybe I can copy and paste the audio from maybe 5 to 10 minutes of the lecture that I feel are most important that I need to review before the exam. And then I can just have that in a single file. If you're interested in learning about Sonosent Audio Note Taker, many of Alabama Voc Rehab specialists have this software available for demonstration and can help you assist you in learning how to use this tool. And there's also a free download. You can download a free trial on the Sonosent Audio Note Taker website. Another tool to help with taking notes is the Livescribe Smart Pen. There are actually several versions of this available. They range in price from anywhere from $99 to $199. You can purchase it at places like the office stores like Staples or Office Depot, as well as many college bookstores are providing this option. This is a fun tool because it looks just like an ink pen, and then you use special paper that has dots on it. Well, what's nice about the special paper is when you're audio recording the class, wherever you're writing on that paper, it remembers where it's at. So when you're going back to listen to the audio, you could hit play and listen to the entire audio from the pen, but then instead of having to listen to the entire audio, anywhere you touch on the paper becomes a new audio syncing point. So let's say the teacher said, this is an important point, and I draw a little star. Well, when I'm reviewing my notes, I just touch that little star, and then the pen immediately starts playing the audio from that point. So it really saves the trouble of having to listen to an entire lecture. This is one of my favorite tools. Simple, easy to use. I love it because you can easily write formulas. If you're a doodler and you want to draw pictures while listening to a lecture, this can help and still does the audio syncing at the same time. Whether you're using Sonosent or the Livescribe pen to do the audio recording, it's the same as using an audio voice recorder. You would need permission to be able to record the class. This tool, we do have this available in the Task Lending Library that can be accessed at al.atforall.com, and that's a free trial. You can check it out from us for 2 to 3 weeks just to see if it would meet your students' needs. Very easy tool to learn to use. Now, for those Mac users in the world, you've got it set. If you're going to take your MacBook to your college class to take lectures, and you have Mac for Word, then you can actually do audio syncing within that application. Windows fans, it's just not available yet. Maybe one day soon we'll have this option. But if you're a MacBook user and you have Mac for Word, instead of viewing the normal document, you go up to your View menu and switch to a notebook layout. And if you'll notice, the screenshot here shows you, it looks kind of like a spiral notebook. In notebook mode, you now get an Audio Notes tab. Within this Audio Notes tab, you can select Record Audio, and this will let you record the audio while you're typing your notes. Now, the audio does not sync with every single word, it's just every single line, but it's still a great feature to have if you're a MacBook user. There is a video linked on YouTube to how to set this up as well in your MacBook. Now remember earlier we said one of the challenges with note-taking is organization. There are two different utilities that can be very helpful in helping organize your notes all in one central location. They are Evernote and OneNote. They're very similar. There are apps that are available on both iPhones, smartphones, Android phones, your tablets, as well as you can access them on the web, which is great. So what's nice about organizing your notes using like Evernote or OneNote is it's web-based and all of your files are saved right there. There's no excuse if you go home for the weekend if you're at college and be like, oops, I left my notebook at home, I can't study for the test. Oh, yes you can. It's saved online. So just log on to Evernote or OneNote and your notes are saved there if you've uploaded them. Now, what's neat about Evernote and OneNote is they play nicely with different utilities. The Livescribe Pen actually can automatically sync to Evernote via the web. You don't even have to plug it into your computer. You can also, there are many apps that work with Evernote or OneNote. So if you're thinking about, how do I utilize these tools, really look at the sites to see, because they'll tell you on their websites it works with this tool or it works best with this. There are great videos on how to use Evernote or OneNote. When you're first starting using either tool, it can be a little overwhelming, but they're worth it if you have problems with organizing information, losing things, or if you want to have all your notes in one spot and be able to access them in numerous ways. So I've talked a little bit about apps, but what is it if you're taking notes with an app, whether it's on your smartphone or a tablet, what are some of those key features that you may want that app to have? Now what's the beauty of apps is there's not one that'll do, there's not one app, only one app that meets your needs. There are so many apps out there. So it's important when you're looking at the apps to think, what is it that I need that app to be able to do? What features would help me? Just because I've listed numerous features doesn't mean that you as a learner would have to have all of these features. It's really what's important, especially for students with disabilities, is that they understand their learning styles. They understand, I need this feature or I don't need this feature. For example, audio syncing. Just like the Livescribe Pen, there are apps that when you type or when you write, they'll sync the audio as you're writing. Well, that's great unless you don't need audio. So for me, I'm a very visual learner. Listening to things doesn't help me learn. So usually, I don't ever have to re-listen to something. I would much rather re-look at what I wrote or rewrite something. So audio syncing wouldn't be a feature I would need in an app, but it is a great feature in an app. And I'm going to show you an app in a few minutes on how this might be helpful. Organization. If you're using Evernote or OneNote, you'd want an app that would play with those, that would automatically sync to them. Some note-taking apps also have the ability to import files. Most college professors will provide a copy of handouts prior to a lecture, such as the PowerPoint or PDF note files. Not every app will let you import those. Remember how earlier I talked about using a camera to help take notes? Some of the note-taking apps will easily let you add a photograph. That can be really helpful if you're, let's say you're taking a science class and the teacher is showing an experiment and you want to snap a picture of that experiment and have it right there with your notes. That would be helpful. Some apps only let you type, while others will let you handwrite, which matters because think about it. On a typing, it's pretty easy if you're typing words, but I don't know about you, but I have a hard time typing things when it's numbers, when it's formulas like chemistry or algebra or some kind of math class or economics class. It can become difficult if the app only has typing, so you may need an app that has both typing and and handwriting. And finally, another feature that you may want is the ability to highlight. So if you were taking notes and you had the PDF file of a PowerPoint, maybe you want to just highlight the important information as the teacher is talking. Some apps will let you do that, others won't. So let's take a minute now, and I'm going to load my iPad and show you some features on some apps that may be helpful for taking notes. Excuse me 1 second. So now you can see my iPad on your screen. And I'm going to show you some note-taking apps, just a couple of them. I'm going to start with Notability. As you can see, I have several apps in my note-taking folder of apps. So as you can see, here's an example of notes I've taken. And you really can't tell what the lecture was about because I just have letters. I love that it automatically dates it too, because that helps with organization. I don't have to remember when was that class period and things like that. Well, if I hit the playback, what you're going to hear is you're going to hear the audio from that class period. Well, let's start a new one. So I'm going to start a new note just to kind of show you from the beginning. There's the date automatically. So I'm just going to give you a little lecture about TASK. So I want you to know, and I'm going to hit record, I want you to know that TASK stands for Technology Assistance for Special Consumers. Like I told you, my name is Laura Parks, and I have been here now for approximately 9 years, and I have loved what I do. I have a special education degree, and I got my special education degree from the University of Florida, and I have a cat whose name is Marley, and he's big and he weighs 20 pounds. So you saw I recorded the lecture, and I took a few notes. Now listen as I play back, and what you'll see what the audio syncing feature I'm talking about that I really like. You can't hear the audio, but if you'll notice when I touch each line, that's where the audio starts. So instead of every word being the sync point, every line becomes the audio sync point. So if I type something important, I hit enter and it will come up. Sorry about that audio. Sometimes technology is not our friend. I do want to show you over to the right. We can hit the add button. This lets us add a photo. So I could have a saved photo or a diagram already on my iPad. I could take a photo. I could create a figure. I could put a post-it note. So there's all kinds of things I can add within this particular app. This one does not let me have a document open, so that's one of the disadvantages. There's no ability to import the PowerPoint. I could just take a picture of the PowerPoint, though, if I wanted to. When you add the pictures, or if you're adding, take a photo, it does not audio sync. The only audio syncing is from the typing notes. Now this one will let you handwrite and highlight, but again, the audio syncing is not on the handwritten or the highlight. It's only on the typed. Let me show you one more note-taking app. This is called Paperport, and it's actually by Nuance. And if you'll notice, this is a PowerPoint that I've done before. So it was easily to import this. And now I can also do audio recording. I can highlight. So if the teacher is saying something important, I can do it. I can change the width size so it's not quite so bold. I can zoom in here, just using the pinch feature and make it larger. So there's some different features I can do with this. As you can see, I have lots of pages of notes. You're only seeing the one, but on my screen I can see the left, and there's some multiple pages of those things. So that's Paperport. It's a great note-taking app. But again, there's so many apps to choose from. You want to think about what are the features that I need the app to be able to do in order to make the good decision about which app I'm going to use. Okay, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint now. And so there's examples that you'll see of different note-taking apps. Now, the next process thing I'm going to explain is the repeat. Have you ever been in a class and you just didn't get it, the information, and it sure would be helpful if someone were to repeat what was said? Well, the challenges with having something repeated, and let me go back just a minute, is sometimes students are hesitant to ask the professor to repeat or clarify themselves. Why is that? Well, some of it is that fear that, oh, it's a professor, and they're going to think my question is stupid. Some of it is the fear that their peers are going to think they're stupid. That student always asks the questions. Why can't they get it? They're so dumb. Well, nobody wants to ask a question if that's how they feel their peers are thinking about them. There's also a time concern. You know, a student may not want to ask a question because they realize that it's going to take up too much time, or they don't, you know, it's close to time to go home and they don't want to delay the whole class. Also, sometimes a student needs repetition. So a professor needs to say something 2 or 3 times for the student to be able to process it and to really get it in. That's not necessarily something that a professor will always do in a college class, so it can become difficult in a lecture situation. Sometimes students need something repeated because they lack the background knowledge in order to understand the content. Let me give you an example. I took high school chemistry in 10th grade. And I took college chemistry my freshman year. Well, that had been 2 years since I had had chemistry, and I might have forgotten some of that information. Also, the way my teacher taught it may not have been the same way that the college professor was teaching it. So that gap in that background knowledge can be really challenging. And sometimes it helps to have material repeated so that the student can get that background knowledge, whether they forgot it or they never learned it. Sometimes it's also difficult to understand professors. Professors may come from a different part of the country or the world and have different accents, or maybe English language is their second language, so they may have a very heavy accent and be hard to understand. The professor may talk too fast for them to understand, or they may use vocabulary that the student's not used to using. That's where repeating can be very helpful for a student. Also, sometimes repeating content can just allow a student to see something in just a slightly different way, and this can make the difference for them understanding it and not understanding it. Let me show you one of my favorite examples of repeating. This is Khan Academy. It is web-based, or you can also get it on many apps. It is free. I've just pulled up a simple Khan Academy lesson on trig functions, and I'm just going to play it briefly so you kind of can get a feeling of what it sounds like.
Y equals sine theta and y equals cosine theta are, and then we could think about how many times they intersect and maybe where they actually intersect. So let's get started. So first of all, just to be clear, this is a unit circle, this is the x-axis, this is the y-axis. Over here we're going to graph these two graphs. So this is going to be the y-axis, and it's going to be a function of theta, not x, on the horizontal axis.
Well, I won't make you sit through the whole lesson. As you can see, this particular lesson is about 11 minutes long, but the beauty of Khan Academy is you can watch it 50 times and nobody knows that you had to watch it so many times. Some students do complain that he's kind of a very monotone voice. He sometimes will throw in some corny sense of humor, but sometimes that's what it takes in order to learn content. If you'll notice on the bottom of the screen there is closed captioning, so it's typing everything he says. We could turn that off. This is important for a student that maybe has some has some auditory processing or some hearing impairment. It's great to have the closed captionings on, but we can turn it off. So this is just one example, and like I said, Khan has several different categories, and I'll just go back to Khan's main website. It's khanacademy.org. And as you can see, he's got different subjects, including math, science, economics, computing, test prep, a wide variety of subjects. Some are very high school based, and others could take you up through college. Another great example, and students love this, is YouTube. YouTube can be a great opportunity to have content repeated. Now, I always warn students, there's lots of funny videos out there of cats doing things and dogs barking, and it can be distracting sometimes utilizing YouTube because that temptation is there to go watch movies something or take a study break, and then all of a sudden it's been 2 hours and you've watched every single funny cat video and not your class that you needed to watch on YouTube. So it's important that students do learn self-control and then know, okay, I've got to watch this video and I have to be diligent and I can't take a break. And that just takes self-control. I wanted to pull this up because I think this is one of the funniest lectures. This is from MIT, which MIT is a very reputable institution, the Massachusetts Institution of Technology. Look at the year it was made, 1987. Well, this is one of the problems with repeat. It's important for students that are using tools such as YouTube or Khan Academy for them to determine if the content is still accurate. Now, believe it or not, the information provided in this lecture is still very relevant. Many of the textbooks that engineering students use actually have Alan Oppenheimer as one of the co-authors because he's got valid information and things haven't changed as far as the theory that he was teaching. Now, how we apply the theory has definitely changed. So students have to be able to understand if the information is accurate and if it corresponds to what their professor was saying, what their textbook says, and really process that. Sometimes it's actually good to hear things that don't agree with the textbook because then the student can say, okay, well, this is what the video said, but I know that that's not true. And it kind of provides a foundation of, I know that the correct answer is this. But you have to be cautious. You don't want to listen to too much incorrect information because you may mess up on the test. So I'll just show you an example of what this video from MIT looks like.
The parameter omega 0 as the frequency and the parameter phi as the phase. And graphically, the continuous time sinusoidal signal has the form shown here. Now, the sinusoidal signal has a number of important properties that we'll find it convenient to exploit as the course goes along. One of which.
So that gave you just a little idea of how YouTube has that. There are many other universities that have YouTube channels, and students can explore those to find something that may be helpful for them in order to relearn a content that they didn't understand or to provide some background knowledge for the lecture that they're listening to. Now there are also a couple apps as well, and I'm just going to pull up my iPad here again in a minute to show you. If you'll just give me 1 second. It is not letting me share my iPad. Give me 1 moment and I will get it back on. And this is a great opportunity to explain to you. We want to teach students what to do if their technology fails them during class, because it may happen. They may be using something like the Livescribe Smart Pen and they didn't charge it the night before and they run out of power. Do they have a backup plan? Some universities will let students audit a class and take it with another professor and go to another period. So that may be something that the student can do if their pen doesn't work and they wanted to audio record the lecture. Here's some examples of some other YouTube channels that may have it available in order to watch classes from different universities such as MIT or UC Berkeley, Yale, Stanford. Another feature available only on Apple devices such as iPads or iPhones or Mac computers is iTunes University. This is one of my favorite resources for repeating because what it is universities, schools, and other institutions such as museums and other federal programs have posted videos and lectures related to various topics. It's really simple to explore. Some of it includes only audio, some of it does include PowerPoints and presentations, and there's one that even has a complete guide that gives you like worksheets and questions to go along with the lecture, which can really enhance and help a student learn. It's extremely important if a student is hesitant to take a class because maybe they don't think they have enough information. Well, it's a great way to get some background knowledge. Some students may also use like YouTube and iPad and iTunes University to provide some basic information before they go doing some research on a paper because it gives them that background knowledge that they may need to help them understand what they're reading. I'll go ahead and see if it'll let you see it now. So now you see my iPad again. And so here's the repeat feature of iTunes University. And if you'll notice, I actually have European Civilizations downloaded from Yale University. And here's the one I was telling you that had so much comprehensive. So you can watch the class lecture. There's transcripts that you can look at, very comprehensive. Now when I try to play it, it's not going to work, so I'm not going to show you that feature, but I do want to show you the catalog briefly. I could search for a specific topic that I was researching, and they also have different categories. So there's some different courses, and if I go to featured, you can see I can search from universities and colleges, and they're alphabetical. I do happen to know that Auburn University has an iTunes University, as well as Alabama. And there's things such as Beyond Campus, which if you're looking at art museums and things, which can provide a different perspective on different topics. Sometimes they're not as academic, so it really helps it make it easier to understand the first time before you jump in to understand a lecture of a college professor. So that's iTunes University. Another example of repeat is this interactive whiteboards. So let me show you an example of an interactive whiteboard I did. I'm actually going to show you an older one. So here's a math problem, 2x equals 12, and I'm going to show you how to solve the problem. I'm circling it, and I can use different colored pens. What's nice about this is you're recording what you're doing, and it also records your audio. So when you play it back, you can hear it, which is very helpful in utilizing this tool. And I love using these interactive whiteboards. For example, if I was trying to figure out how to solve a problem, I could work with a peer tutor. I could work with a teaching assistant, or even go to the professor during office hours and say, can you show me how to solve this problem, and will you do it on my iPad? Well, the professor or whoever you're working with could show you on the iPad and walk you through it and talk you through it. And then when you got back home and you were trying to do a similar problem, you could rewatch it as many times as you need it. You could pause it each step of the way. So incredibly helpful for math and chemistry and those kind of subjects. But you can also use it for more writing styles or proofreading. So there's a lot of variety of uses to do it. And this is called an interactive whiteboard. Educations is one example. There's another one called Show Me, and there are different ones also available on the Android devices. So that's the category of repeat. Okay, now let's take a look again at our next category of things to help us with learning. Send that to the back. The next reading challenge that comes for students with learning disabilities or studying in college is reading. I can recall being behind in reading from the very first day of class. All of a sudden they want you to read an entire chapter or 3 or 4 chapters in a text in a literature book or a novel. So it can be very challenging, all the reading that's required in college. The reason it can be challenging is that you may have a vision issue. You may need a larger font, or you may be blind and need alternative formats such as Braille. You may also have vision tracking issues where it's hard to follow on a line. You tend to get frequent headaches, migraines due to too much reading. You also may have a physical disability that hinders your ability to read. You may not be able to hold the book, flip the pages, because of a physical disability. Another challenge that can come with reading text is the speed. Well, if you're a slow reader and you have a lot to read, it's going to take you longer than your peers. But they can't recall what they read. Fluency is not a problem, but they can't comprehend it. They don't begin to make the connections to what they already know. And finally, another challenge is in auditory processing. Maybe you can't comprehend so well reading, but if you can hear it, you can understand it. Well, these are all challenges that can be met with technology. First, I do want to mention, if you have a print disability, you do qualify for additional resources. Now, what is a print disability? A print disability is defined in 3 different ways. You either visually have a problem that it prevents you from reading printed text, such as you're blind, or you have a legal blind and you can see but in extremely large fonts. If you have a physical disability and you can't hold the book and turn the pages, you qualify as a print disability. And the third way you qualify as a print disability is if you have a learning disability that's organic in nature. So this must be documented by a medical doctor in order to be eligible for a print disability. And the problem is, what about students with ADHD? They would benefit from having text read aloud to them. They would benefit from audiobooks. But they do not automatically qualify as a print disability unless they have a physical issue, a vision issue, or a learning disability that's organic in nature, meaning there's something with their brain, the way they process information, that prevents them from accessing text. If you qualify as a print disability, you can get services through Bookshare, Learning Ally, and National Library Services for the Blind and Physically Handicapped. All these resources do continue to support learners throughout college. Well, let me tell you, college textbooks have changed. You no longer have to purchase a $200 50-pound textbook. Many students now opt for electronic textbooks. Basically, for about half the cost of the printed version, usually around $100, students get access to an electronic textbook online that they have a subscription to for the semester or maybe 2 semesters. The problem is with electronic textbooks is not all of them are accessible. It is important, if you need an accessible textbook that will let you have it read aloud, that you read the information when you purchase it, because most publishers will not let you refund it. What I mean is when it's not accessible is that you may not be able to highlight the words. Highlighting the words is key when you're using text-to-speech. So I'm going to show you now briefly a text-to-speech program I have on my computer. And this is just Natural Reader. It's one of my favorite free ones. If you can highlight text, then you can have it read aloud. So I'm just going to open it here. And I'm going to make it a floating bar. Now this is something we'll do webinars on as far as text-to-speech, so I'm not going to go into depth, but I do briefly want to show you how it works. So let's say I'm on a web page, and I have just pulled up a Wikipedia, and I want to read some about the history of the United States. Well, all I have to do is highlight the text and then hit play.
When to date the start of the history of the United States is debated among historians. Older textbooks started with the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1492 and emphasized the European background or.
So as you could hear, and it's a little bit wobbly, it's not quite as wobbly in person, it's using the technology I'm recording this webinar with, but it reads the text aloud. There wasn't highlighting. Now I can go to my settings and change the voice, and I can change the speed of the voice. Being able to change the speed of the voice is something that can be very helpful. For students with learning disabilities that have really mastered auditory processing, sometimes they can listen to text read at 250 to 350 words per minute. That's pretty fast. I always like to tease them and say, think about it. If you only read 150 words per minute when you're reading text, but you can understand it at 300 words per minute when it's read to you, you're going to be done twice as fast. And then you get to go do the fun college stuff that we all enjoy in college. So that's one example of a text-to-speech. And now let's take a look at some of the things that we can do on an iPad with text-to-speech. So I've got my iPad back here, and I'm going to go ahead and put the PowerPoint in the background so we have a darker background. So with the iPad, it is very simple to turn on text-to-speech. You just go into your settings, under General, Accessibility, and the fourth one down says Speak Selection. I have it turned on already. I can change voices. Really the voice options are for foreign languages, so I'm going to keep it with English. And I can make it Australian or a little bit different. And I can also, from this screen, change my speaking rate. Again, I can make it slower.
Speak selection reads selected content.
Or I can make it faster.
Speak selection reads selected content.
I'm going to leave it fast just so you can hear what that sounds like with the document. I also have highlight words turned on. So when it reads, it's going to highlight each word. This may or may not be helpful for students. Some of the students I've worked with that have ADHD say it's distracting. So they prefer just to listen and not try to pay attention to the words while they're reading. So I'm just going to pull up a website again here and show you how easy it is now that Speak Selection is turned on. So here's the text on my website. I just hold my finger down and I get the option to copy, but I'm actually going to just stretch this bubble just a little bit ways to include more sentences, and then I'm just going to hit speak.
World War II, one of the darkest periods in the history of the world, raged from 1939 to 1945 and involved almost the entire world.
It's actually a pretty good rate as far as listening to it. I could make it a bigger bubble and do the whole page to have it read aloud. Now this feature works in lots of different apps on the iPad, including iBooks, Notes, Emails, and Safari. Now just be cautious because, for example, in Kindle books, it doesn't always work, because in Kindle when you highlight a word, it asks you, do you want to define it or do you want to highlight it? It doesn't give you the option to speak. So that's just, it's important to know, well, what is the app that I'm trying to use and will that feature work for me? All right, let's take a look at a couple more things. For reading text, there's the little information about text apps. I do want to talk a little bit about some of the key features when you're looking at text apps, reading text apps. You may want to consider if it's a real voice versus a computerized voice. So if you're using a tool like Learning Ally, or if you're purchasing audiobooks, they're professionally recorded. Sometimes this is much more easier to listen to for a student with a disability. But then again, I've had students tell me they prefer the computerized voice because they're not distracted by the nuance, the rise and fall of a human voice, or the inflection that's used. Also, the ability to change speed. So remember I talked about if you could process it faster, go ahead and crank it up and get done faster, especially if you can comprehend what you're listening to. Highlighting words when reading, I showed you that could be turned off and on in the iPad. And also as far as what text will it read. There are great apps now that will actually let you take a picture of a worksheet or a textbook and have the text read aloud. This is amazing technology that's really just developed in the last couple of years, but it really opens the doors for lots of students with reading disabilities. Let's take a look at one more piece of technology that can help when students study with technology, like when they're in college, and that's flashcards. I recall Latin class in college. I had a key ring full of flashcards and I thought that was awesome. Why? Because I had all my flashcards handy. I could pull them off when I was in the bus. I could sort them on the key ring, the ones I knew versus the ones I didn't know. Well, one of the challenges with that is the time it took to create those flashcards. I'd have to write the word on the first, the definition on the back. Write the word, the definition on the back. Well, for me, that's where I learned it. 90% of the time, once I wrote it down, I had it memorized. But for students that aren't visual learners or kinesthetic learners, but they're auditory learners, creating the cards doesn't help. They need that repetition. So all the time they spend creating the cards, they could have used that time to help review the cards. Also organization. You can see the picture I've included. It shows a stack of flashcards organized with rubber bands. Maybe one stack is for cards that you don't know, one that you know, one that you maybe know. Also sometimes when using flashcards it requires reading skills, and if you're a struggling reader, you're having to spend extra effort reading the card in order to study it, not really mastering the content. And the biggest problem with flashcards is sometimes the way you're studying them is not matching the test method. So flashcards are great if the test is matching or multiple choice. But what about those tests that are recall, where the professor gives you a date and you have to write the event that happened during that date? Or the reverse, they give you an event and you have to write the date. For me, I struggled with that because I could see it on the card and couldn't get it out on paper. But for some students it works for them. So it's important that you think about, how does my flashcard that I'm using really match that? So when you're looking at flashcard apps, what are some of the key features you may want in your flashcard app? Well, one of the cool things in a lot of the apps are sharing apps, that you can share your flashcards. Well, what do you mean by that? Well, let's say you have a science test that covers 4 chapters, and you're studying with a group of 4 friends. Well, each friend takes one chapter, puts the definitions on a flashcards, and then share them. You all can download them from the website and to review them. Just like with the reviewing repeat method when we looked at videos, a student would have to be able to discern, is the student that made this flashcard deck doing a good job? Did they include the correct information? Some flashcard apps also include text-to-speech, so whatever text is displayed on the flashcard will be read aloud. Very helpful for someone that has a learning disability. Sometimes flashcard apps have the ability to have audio. One of the classes almost all students seem to take is music appreciation. Often those tests include an audio portion where you have to listen to a song and name the generation it's from, whether it's from who the composer was, what kind of music it is, and having an audio flashcard where it would play the audio would really come in handy. Some flashcard apps will also let you include photographs. So let's say you were studying a diagram in your textbook. You could make a flashcard just by snapping a picture of the diagram in your textbook and then create the flashcard based on that. Some of the flashcard apps have ways that you can sort them versus do you know it or do you not know it. And then also some of the flashcard apps provide you multiple methods of studying. Now I'm going to show you some on the iPad. There are some web-based as well, such as Quizlet and GWiz and things like that. So let's take a look at some of the apps that are available on the iPad. So one of my favorites is G/Flash Plus. Let's take a look at the periodic table of elements. So as you can see, the card gives me the element and I have to know the symbol. So Seaborgorium, I'm guessing that's SB. It was SG. You'll notice on the right-hand screen of the iPad there's a check mark or there's a red X. Well, I got this one wrong, so I'm going to red X it. If you'll notice on the right side, it tracks which ones are right and wrong. Calcium. Easy, Ca. Got it right. Okay, well, Irium, that's a little difficult. I'm going to show you what's cool about this flashcard app is I can now make it multiple choice. That really makes my life a lot easier. My accuracy is going to go up because I can just guess. Because usually the element, the symbol is very close to the name. Such as this one, TA, easy. And it automatically scores it right or wrong because I don't have to be honest with it. 10. Now this one's really tricky. It's not just TI. Oops, I got it wrong. It was SN. And then I would just flip to go to the next card. So I can turn multiple choice off and on. Great if I have a multiple choice test, but if it's a fill in the blank test, using it without it probably helps. Now I can also flip, there's a full card mode, and I can flip it to what it's shown. Let's take a look here. I'm going to show you now that instead of doing the element, I can actually flip it. So instead of showing me the element, it'll show me the letters, and I have to tell the element. And then I'm going to do reverse question and answer. So now if I go back without the multiple choice, it gives me the symbol, and I have to say the element. Yeah, totally didn't get that one right. Not a clue. These are kind of difficult. So you can see this one's great because it lets you study in multiple ways, and it lets you flip the cards whether you're setting the front and the back at different times. This one doesn't usually have, it has some audio and has some pictures, but it's not the easiest to create the audio and pictures in. Let me show you one that's a little bit easier to do audio and pictures in. This one's called A+ Pro. And there's SAT words, and I have a deck of vocabulary there. Here's world capitals. Let's take a look at this deck. Albania, what's that the capital of? Tehran. So I would say I know, I don't know, or if not sure, so I'll say I know. Algeria. Aljazeera. Let's say I got that one right. I know that one. Andorra. Not so sure. I don't know. So now when I'm done, it tells me how many cards I viewed, how many I didn't know, and how many I knew. It even gave me the time. So I'm going to quit that. So it gives me a lot of data back, and I could just study the ones I don't know. I want to show you when I create cards with this app. So cool. So I'm going to create a set. And if you'll notice, it gives me the option for photo off or on and audio off and on. So this is very simple to create your own audio and photos within this. So if I was studying for music appreciation, maybe a foreign language where I knew the teacher was going to say a foreign word and I would have to translate it, then this would be a great app to help me with that because I could have it record it right there on the app. Super easy and makes learning a lot easier. One more I want to show you before we're finished today, and it's Quizlet. Quizlet is probably one of the most well-known web-based learning ones available. And let's just take a look at Earth Science. What's nice about Quizlet, the app, and it's great online as well too, is that you can do your cards, and I actually can play the card and hear it. And so it would actually read it aloud to me, and it would, I can have it automatically read, or I can read it when I touch it, and then I can automatically have it so it just swipes it, and that's in the card mode. I can also go to a learn mode where I have to type in the definition, and I can always flip it where it's the back instead. And so now I would type in type of temperature, climate over land. Got it wrong. It begins with a C. Okay, so it's continental. And if the test is a typing one, that's a great way to learn it. And then if I go back, we can also do a scatter. What's cool about scatter, it's going to show me half the cards, the front, and the other half the back. So then I would just match them. And I'm not reading them. Very simple, easy to use, but that's Quizlet. So as you can see, studying with technology is really important. And there's lots of different tools that can help with whether it's taking notes, and if you want to record your class or have your PowerPoint and edit it, whether it's repeating, so if you need to hear a lecture again, or if you need to hear somebody else say it slightly different. Whether you're reading text, so you need text read aloud to you and you want to use a text-to-speech program like Natural Reader, or if you're going to use your iPad, your read selection option, and then flashcards. Flashcards are a great way to study, and there's lots of different ways to do it. So I hope today after this webinar you've learned that technology can really help students with learning disabilities in college be independent and make their accommodations themselves. I hope you'll take a minute to review. There is going to be a brief survey asking you about the training. If you would complete that, that will help us with funding. And if you have any questions, feel free to email me, or you can type them in your chat and I'll be happy to help. Thanks so much for participating.